My heels clicked against the marble floor of my apartment lobby, the sound bouncing off empty walls like an echo nobody wanted. It was a Tuesday evening, just past 9, and I had been awake since 5 in the morning. 14 hours inside the glass offices of Horizon PR. Another campaign delivered. Another milestone reached. The client had shaken my hand with both of his, practically glowing, saying the presentation had exceeded every expectation. On the elevator ride up to my floor, I checked my phone the way I always did. Waiting. The screen was blank. No missed calls. No texts. Not a single notification from any member of my family. I was 32 years old that day. I stood in front of the mirror inside the elevator and looked at myself the way a stranger might. Quinn Edwards, Senior PR Executive. Green eyes that had not cried in years because somewhere along the way, I had stopped expecting things that were never going to come. The elevator opened. I walked to my door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. And there on my coffee table, exactly where I had left it that morning, was the small cake I had bought myself from the bakery downstairs. One candle. Unlit. I set my briefcase down, kicked off my heels, and sat on the couch. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered to no one in particular. The apartment felt larger than it ever had. Not because it was big, because it was quiet in a way that had weight. I told myself it did not matter. I was a grown woman. I managed multi-million-dollar accounts. I did not need a phone call to feel valid. But then I opened my laptop and my fingers did something I had not planned. They opened Facebook. I do not know why. Some old instinct, maybe. The kind that lives in the body and not the brain. The first post stopped me completely. There was my brother Miles, a champagne flute raised high in a room full of faces I recognized. Our parents. Aunts. Uncles. Cousins I had not seen in 2 years. All of them gathered, all of them smiling, all of them there. Behind Miles hung a banner. The words were spelled out in gold letters. "Congratulations on your promotion." My father's arm was draped across Miles' shoulder. The kind of arm that says, "I am proud of you," that says, "You are worth celebrating." My mother stood on the other side, beaming. The photo had been posted 4 hours ago. For hours. I had been in a boardroom presenting a campaign that increased a client's revenue by 41%, and my entire family had been in a room celebrating my brother's promotion without a single word to me. Not a text. Not a call. Not a happy birthday, Quinn, squeezed in between the champagne and the canapes. I scrolled down slowly. There were dozens of photos. Every corner of the family represented. I set the laptop on the cushion beside me and did not move for a long time. I should tell you that this was not the first time. It never is with things like this. The first time I remembered clearly was when I was 11 years old. My parents had promised to be back from Miles' debate competition before my birthday dinner. I had dressed up. I had sat at the restaurant table alone with the waiter feeling sorry for me, watching the candle melt slowly into the frosting. They arrived an hour and 40 minutes late, smelling like celebration, full of stories about Miles' trophy. They had not thought to call. At 17, I was sent to my grandmother's house for my birthday weekend because my parents were touring Yale with Miles. "It is his future, Quinn," my father had said, not quite meeting my eyes, as though the words themselves embarrassed him. At my college graduation, summa cum laude, I had stood at the podium and given a speech I had rehearsed for 2 weeks. Before the dinner plates were cleared, Miles announced his engagement. The conversation shifted before my diploma had time to dry. Just last month, I had told my father about the Horizon campaign. 41% increase in client revenue. He had glanced at his watch and said, That is good, Quinn. Not like Miles' work in finance, of course. That is where real impact happens. I sat on my couch, the unlit candle still standing in its cake, and I understood something I had been circling for 32 years. This was not an accident. This was a pattern. And I had been quiet inside it for far too long. My phone rang at exactly midnight. I watched my mother's name appear on the screen and felt something foolish stir in my chest. Hope, I think. Even after everything, even at 32, some part of me still reached for it. I answered. Quinn, darling, her voice came through warm and rushing. I am so glad I caught you. Listen, we are planning something special for Miles and Jessica's anniversary next month. Nothing too elaborate. I was hoping you could help handle the catering. Maybe the decorations too. You are so good at that sort of thing. I sat very still. The clock on my wall had just finished striking 12. My birthday was officially over. Mom, I said. My voice was quiet. Today was my birthday. There was a pause. Then, oh, honey. She sounded genuinely surprised, and somehow that was worse than if she had known and ignored it. With Miles' big promotion, it just slipped our mind. Slipped. Like a key down a drain. Like something small and forgettable. I looked at my laptop, still open to the last photo of the party. My father laughing. My mother's hand on Miles' arm. I looked at my email. The performance bonus notification I had opened earlier that day. $82,000. For the campaign they called just advertising. Something moved inside me then. Something that had been pressed down for a very long time finally shifted. Don't worry about it, Mom, I said. The words came from somewhere new. I understand exactly what is important to this family. And for the first time in my life, I truly did. If you are watching this and you have ever felt invisible in the very family that was supposed to see you most, I want you to hit that subscribe button right now. Because this story is just getting started, and I promise you, it gets better. For days after my birthday, I was at my desk preparing for a client presentation when my laptop pinged with a notification. My mother had accidentally added me to a family group chat. I stared at the screen, not sure at first what I was seeing. Then I read from the top. Your father wrote, Quinn should contribute at least $20,000 toward Miles and Jessica's anniversary celebration. She just received that bonus. My mother replied, it is time she supports this family for once. Then Miles, she has always been selfish with money. I read it 3 times. Not because I could not understand the words. Because I needed to be sure I was not imagining them. There, at the bottom of my mother's message, was my name. Spelled with 1 N, Quinn. My own mother could not spell my name correctly in the message where she was calling me selfish. I leaned back in my chair and looked out at the Chicago skyline. I thought about the 41%. I thought about the birthday that slipped her mind. I thought about the 11-year-old girl at the restaurant table watching her candle melt. And then I thought about $82,000 sitting in my account, earned by my work, belonging to nobody but me. I closed the chat without responding. I opened a new browser tab. And I started making plans. My colleague Diane stopped by my office door that afternoon, dark eyes catching my expression the way she always did. Everything okay? She asked. Miles used my contacts at Regentech, I told her. Pulled their marketing director into a pitch for his investment firm. Without asking me. Diane's expression sharpened. That is the 3rd time. I nodded. And my parents think I should give $20,000 toward his anniversary party. She let out a slow breath. What exactly have they done for you lately? The question hung there like something I had never been allowed to ask out loud. Before I could answer, my boss Lawrence walked in. Lawrence ran Horizon with the kind of steady authority that never needed volume. He slid a folder onto my desk. Westfield campaign results, he said. 41% increase in quarterly revenue. The board is extremely pleased. His smile was the real kind, the kind that reached the eyes. This is why I fought for your bonus, Quinn. You earned every penny of it. After he left, Diane squeezed my shoulder. See? At least someone here knows your worth. My phone buzzed. Miles, calling for the third time that hour. I stared at the screen until it stopped. Then I opened the browser tab I had been building for 2 days. Michigan Lakefront Properties. I had not made any decisions yet, but I was getting close. Something about that felt like breathing for the first time in years. That Tuesday evening, I stopped at my neighbor Mrs. Bennett's apartment on the 3rd floor. She opened the door with the warm smile that had become one of the most reliable things in my life. 84 years old, and she moved like someone who had decided age was optional. Oatmeal cookies, she said, stepping aside to let me in. Right on time. We sat at her small kitchen table with its checkered cloth, and I told her everything. The group chat. The 20,000. The misspelled name. The birthday that slipped through the cracks of Miles' promotion party. She listened the way she always did, without interrupting, without filling silences she did not need to fill. When I finished, she placed her hand over mine. Some parents never see their children clearly, she said. They are too busy looking at their own reflection. I carried those words home with me. I changed into something comfortable and sat on my couch with my laptop. The Michigan listing was still open. A 4-bedroom lake house. Wide windows facing the water. A cedar deck wrapping around 3 sides. Mature pines for privacy. The owners had already moved to Arizona and wanted a quick sale. I studied every photograph for a long time. Something expanded in my chest with each one. Like a room I had not known existed. This could be mine, I thought. Not a concession. Not a contribution to someone else's life. Mine. I did not call anyone. I did not ask for permission. I picked up the phone and called the realtor. The family dinner had been on the calendar for 2 weeks. I had been dreading it with the specific dread of someone who already knows what is coming, but cannot avoid it without becoming someone they do not want to be. My parents' house on Lake Shore Drive looked the way it always did. 3 stories of stone and quiet authority. I arrived at 7. My mother was arranging flowers. My father was pouring scotch. Miles and his wife Jessica were on the leather sofa, looking like a magazine spread that had not been asked for. We ate salmon. My father talked about Miles' promotion for 20 minutes straight. My mother offered perfect supporting details at precisely the right moments. I watched it the way you watch a performance you have seen so many times you can mouth the words. The ask came with dessert. Quinn, my father said, setting down his coffee cup. We need to discuss your contribution to Miles and Jessica's anniversary. 20,000 would cover the venue and catering. You are the only family member who recently received a substantial sum. It seems more than appropriate. My mother nodded. Family supports family, darling. I had been waiting for those words. I can't, I said. My father looked at me the way he looked at things that confused him. I beg your pardon? I cannot contribute $20,000. My voice was steady. That is 1/4 of my bonus. I have other plans for it. The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Nobody in that house had heard me say no before. Not like that. Not without a follow-up apology. Not without softening it into something more comfortable. I watched my father's face move through confusion and then settle into something harder. What other plans could possibly take precedence over your brother's celebration? My future, I said. My mother's eyes filled immediately. After everything we have done for you, she whispered. I looked at her. What exactly have you done for me? I heard the words come out of my own mouth and felt no urge to take them back. My father rose from his chair. He was tall and he knew how to use it. I will not tolerate ingratitude at my table. Your brother is the achiever in this family. The least you can do is support his success. There it was, said plainly, without any dressing on it. Your brother is the achiever. Miles said nothing. He was staring at his wine glass. I stood. I need to go, I said, picking up my purse. My mother caught my arm. Quinn, please. Don't make a scene. But I was already moving toward the door. I did not slam it. I closed it quietly, the way you close something you are finished with. In my car, hands on the wheel, still in the driveway, I sat for a moment. Then I picked up my phone and dialed the realtor. I want to move forward on the Michigan property, I said. She started to ask if I wanted to bring family to see it first. No, I told her. This one is just for me. Before I continue, I want to know something. Have you ever been told your feelings are a scene? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. The mortgage approval came through in 6 days. I signed the papers in a quiet office with large windows and a notary who smelled like lavender. Mrs. Bennett came with me to the closing. She held my hand when I received the keys and said, "You are doing the right thing, dear. Sometimes we need to build our own sanctuary." I drove to the lake house the first weekend I owned it. I stood on the cedar deck and watched the light move across the water for a long time without speaking, without checking my phone, without being needed by anyone. Then I got to work. I painted. I assembled furniture. I hung framed photographs and awards on walls that had never held anything before. My college graduation. The team photo after the Westfield account. The magazine cover featuring the campaign my father once called just advertising. I set up the master bedroom as a space designed entirely around what I liked. I placed a reading chair by the window overlooking the lake. I hung a small wooden sign on the door that said, "The Birthday Suite." I stacked books I had wanted to read for years on the nightstand. I bought the softest bedding I could find. I sent housewarming invitations to Diane, to my colleagues, and to Mrs. Bennett. My finger hovered over my family's names in my contacts. Then I moved on. Only the people who had actually shown up for me. That felt like the most important decision I had made in years. My mother called every morning at 7:15 for the next 2 weeks. I let most of them go to voicemail. Quinn, sweetie. This phase needs to end. Your father has not slept properly since that dinner. The third time she called in one morning, I picked up. Mom, I am 32 years old. Then why are you breaking our hearts? She asked. After everything we sacrificed. I pressed the mascara wand against my lashes and looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. What did you sacrifice for me? I asked. She gasped like I had said something violent. We gave you everything, Quinn. I have a meeting, I told her, and hung up. By afternoon, my father had arrived at Horizon's offices. I saw him the moment the elevator opened. Lawrence's assistant caught my eye from across the reception area and mouthed something urgent. I intercepted my father near the front desk. Dad, this is my workplace. Then conduct yourself like a professional, he said loudly enough to be heard 3 cubicles over. Professionals honor their obligations to family. I guided him toward an empty conference room, my jaw tight. You have upset your mother, he said. She has not stopped crying. I want you to come home and apologize. I am handling a client crisis, I told him. This is not the time. He started again. I closed the door between us and walked back to my desk and called the client. 3 hours later, I stood in front of our executive team and saved a $3 million account. Lawrence told me afterward, "That was extraordinary work, Quinn. You just saved this company's most important relationship." I thought about my father's voice, about what he thought I was worth. It was Diane who told me Miles had been by the office looking for me. I had taken a day off to drive to Michigan, and he showed up at reception asking for me by name. When she told him I was not available, he had given her the look she described as the Edwards family look, the one that says the person in front of you is the unreasonable one for having a boundary. He eventually cornered someone in accounting who mentioned Michigan. "So heads up," Diane said over the phone. "They may figure out where you are." I looked out at my lake from the deck. "Let them," I said. She laughed. I had not heard myself laugh in a while. That weekend was my housewarming. Colleagues came with wine and practical gifts and real smiles. Lawrence brought an expensive Cabernet with a handwritten note that said, "To celebrating yourself." Mrs. Bennet arrived last, carrying a handmade quilt in shades of blue and green. "For your bedroom," she said. "Every home needs something made with love." I held it and felt my eyes sting. We grilled steaks on the deck. Someone brought a portable speaker. Easy music drifted out over the water, while laughter filled the space I had built for myself. I took photographs of everything. Friends on new furniture. Sunset in the windows. Mrs. Bennet showing Diane how to properly fold a dinner napkin. I posted those photos without hesitation. Each one honest. Each one mine. Sunday evening, my father texted, "Where did you get money for a house?" I poured another glass of wine and did not respond. The family gossip network activated within 48 hours. My cousin Elaine called with her voice pitched to the frequency of manufactured concern. "Everyone is talking about your lake house," she said. "Aunt Claudia is beside herself. People are saying you have been hiding money, that this is some kind of breakdown, that you are jealous of Miles." I laughed then, a real one, deep and genuine. "That sounds exactly like something this family would say," I told her. She went quiet. My mother called Thursday evening. I answered on the fourth ring, sitting in my porch swing with the water going dark in the distance. "Quinn Elizabeth Edwards," she began, her voice tight with the kind of control that costs something. "This has gone too far. The Petersons, the Carsons, even Reverend Wallace has been asking questions." "My situation?" I said. She lowered her voice. "This attention-seeking behavior. Buying a house without consulting the family. Posting those photos. People are asking why we were not involved." I rocked slowly in the swing. "What questions specifically?" "Why you needed to give yourself a birthday present," she said. "Why we were not there. It is creating a very uncomfortable situation." I kept my voice light. "It is almost like actions have consequences." She went rigid on the phone. "We need to fix this," she said. "I am organizing a family dinner. Your father and I will clarify this was a misunderstanding." "I am available Tuesday next week," I said. 7 o'clock. "I will bring the photo albums." "What photo albums?" she asked. I smiled into the phone. "The ones I have been keeping since I was 11. If this story is hitting close to home, please subscribe. You are not alone. And comment below, have you ever had to document your own family's behavior just to prove it was real? There was a new development before the Tuesday dinner arrived. A message came from Regentecca's marketing director, a woman named Paula. She had worked with me on 3 campaigns over 2 years. Paula wanted to let me know that Miles had used my name to gain access to her office, suggesting I had endorsed the meeting. I had not. He had borrowed my reputation the same way he borrowed family goodwill, without asking and without acknowledging it was not his to take. I called Miles directly. He answered on the second ring, casual, like we spoke every day. I need you to stop using my professional contacts, I said. No heat in my voice. Just fact. Quinn, come on. Family connections they are not family connections, I said. They are mine. I built them. They are not yours to access without my permission. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you have changed. I know, I said. And I ended the call. That evening I sat at my desk and pulled out the first photo album I had been building for 3 weeks. I had printed photographs from old hard drives, scanned pages from journals I had kept since childhood, highlighted bank statements, and collected birthday cards spanning 25 years. Evidence. Not for a courtroom. For a conversation that was long overdue. The kind of conversation that could not be denied or reframed because the proof was sitting right there in ink and cellophane. Tuesday night arrived with the kind of quiet that feels like the inside of a held breath. I gripped the 3 photo albums against my chest as I walked up my parents' front steps. The evening sun threw long shadows across the lawn that seemed to reach for me. I rang the doorbell. I did not use my key. Tonight I was not the daughter who let herself in. My father opened the door. All 6 feet 2 inches of him, silver hair combed, jacket pressed. His eyes went to the albums and then back to my face. You are late, he said, turning without waiting. No hug. No hello. Just the opener he always used to establish who was already behind. My mother waited in the foyer, tissues in hand, makeup applied with the precision of someone who wanted to look like they had been crying without actually ruining the effect. Miles and Jessica were in the living room. Miles had a drink. Jessica looked uncertain. We sat down to dinner. The good china. Sterling candle holders. The performance of normal. My father served himself first, the way he always had. Then the ask came with dessert, the same as before, simply repeated louder now that 2 weeks had passed. Quinn. We need to revisit your contribution. 20,000, as discussed, toward the venue and catering. You are the only one positioned to help the family right now. My mother. Family supports family. I placed my fork down. I reached for the first album. Let me show you something, I said. I put the first album at the center of the table. My father's jaw tightened. We don't have time for scrapbooks, Quinn. Make time, I said. My voice did not waver once. I opened the first album. Page after page of Miles at birthday parties. Professional photography. 3-tier cakes. Dozens of guests. Ages 6 through 25, every year documented like a national holiday. Turn to page 16, I told Miles. He hesitated, then opened it. His 18th birthday. A car with a bow. Our father handing over keys. Our mother in the background with actual tears of joy. I slid the second album across. This one is mine, I said. My mother reached for it first. Her fingers were not steady as she opened it. Empty pages stared back at her. A few scattered photos. Me alone with a grocery store cupcake. One photograph of Mrs. Bennet hugging me on my 30th. Nothing else. I had nothing to put in it, I said. On my 21st birthday, you were all at Miles' engagement party. I was not invited. I missed 2 family vacations because there was not enough money for my ticket the same years you took Miles to Europe. My father's face was red. What is the point of all this, Quinn? The point is that this is documented, I said. I am not imagining it. I never was. I slid the third album forward. Family trips. Disney. The Grand Canyon. Paris. Every photograph has Miles at the center. I am not in these because I was not there. I was sent somewhere else so there would be room for him. My father stood abruptly, chair scraping hardwood. This is melodrama, Quinn. You have always been the difficult one. I reached into the folder beside me. I had printed the spreadsheet 2 nights ago, highlighted in yellow and blue. 2 columns. Miles versus Quinn. Tuition paid. Birthday gifts by year. Car down payments. Family trips. The numbers told the story plainly. Thousands for him. Hundreds for me. Sometimes nothing at all. Then I produced the diary page. I had kept it in a box under my bed for 23 years. The handwriting was a child's. I read it aloud. Maybe next year they will remember my birthday without Grandma having to call and remind them. My mother made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not the performance. Something real underneath it. Finally, I placed a photograph at the end of the table. Christmas dinner, 3 years ago. An empty chair with a place card that said Quinn. I had been working in Chicago. They had known I was not coming. But they set the place anyway, photographed it, and sent it to me with the caption, "We missed you." "I want you to look more closely at that chair," I said. My mother picked up the photo, squinting. "That is not my regular chair," I said. "That is where you seat guests. Even when you pretend I belong at the table, you still put me on the outside." The room went completely still. Miles stared at the open album. My father looked at the spreadsheet. My mother looked at her own hands. My father finally spoke. "What do you want from us, Quinn? An apology?" We favored Miles. He carries the Edwards name forward. That is simply how things are. My mother began crying real tears this time, not the rehearsed kind. "We did not mean for it to become what it became." "But it did," I said. "And it became a pattern. And I accepted it for 32 years because I did not know I had another option." I stood and gathered my evidence folder, leaving the albums behind. "Those are yours to keep," I said. "Think of them as a gift." Then Miles said something I had not expected. "Quinn, wait." I turned. He was still looking at the photograph of his 18th birthday. The one with the car. The one with our parents beaming. He looked like a man who had just seen something from a different angle and found it did not look the way he thought. "I never knew they sent you that photo," he said. "With a chair." "Quinn, I did not know about any of this." I looked at him for a long moment. I believed him. That was the unexpected thing. I believed Miles did not know the full picture because he had never needed to look. I walked toward the door. I had said what needed to be said. But as I reached the threshold, my phone buzzed. An email notification. I opened it, and my breath stilled. It was from Regentecca's legal department. Subject line, unauthorized use of client access credentials. Linked to Miles Edwards. The situation was not over. It had just become something else entirely. I stood in the doorway of my parents' house reading the email twice. Regentecca's legal team had flagged an unauthorized meeting scheduled under my professional credentials. Miles had not just used my name. He had used my login to book a conference room under my account with their system. This was not a gray area. This was a documented breach of professional conduct. I looked up at Miles. He was still sitting at the dinner table, still holding the photograph of his 18th birthday. He had not yet seen the expression on my face change. I pocketed my phone. I left without saying anything more. In my car, I called Diane. She answered on the second ring. "Tell me you have the Regentec email chain," I said. "The one where they questioned how the meeting was booked." She had it. I called our firm's legal contact next. Then I sent a measured, professional response to Regentecca's legal department clarifying that the booking had been made without my knowledge or consent and that I was cooperating fully. The response came back within 20 minutes. They appreciated my transparency. They were not pursuing action against me. The situation was directed entirely at Miles. I drove home along the lakeshore with the windows down. The night air came off the water cold and clean. I had not planned for this twist. But I had not caused it either. Miles had built this particular trap around himself, using my name as the foundation, and it had held just long enough to collapse on him. I felt no satisfaction. Only the clear, exhausted feeling of someone who had been telling the truth for a very long time and finally had the documents to prove it. Are you still with me? Because this is where it gets really interesting. Subscribe if you have not already and keep reading. 3 days later, Miles came to my lake house. I saw his car in the driveway from the upstairs window and considered not answering. Then I went downstairs and opened the door. He looked like he had not slept. He was carrying a folder. Quinn, can I come in? I stepped aside. We sat at my kitchen table, the water visible through the window behind me. He put the folder down. The Regentech situation, he began. I did not realize I had used your actual credentials. I thought I was using a general firm login. I know, I said. That is the thing about borrowing someone else's access, Miles. You do not always realize what you are standing on until the floor gives way. He rubbed his face. I have been talking to someone. A therapist. Since the dinner. He looked up at me. When you laid everything out like that, with the albums and the spreadsheet, I had no idea it looked like that from where you were standing. I had no idea because I never had to look. That is the difference between us, I said, not unkindly. You never had to look. Everything was brought to you. He was quiet for a moment. I am sorry, Quinn. Not for the therapist to report. Not to smooth things over. I am sorry. I studied my brother's face. He meant it. I could tell the difference by now. I did not forgive everything in that moment. But I let the words land. That was something. My mother called 6 times the following week. I answered the third call on a Wednesday morning. She did not open with guilt. That was new. Quinn, she said, I have been thinking about what you showed us at the table. Thinking, or I asked her. Both, she said quietly. I have been speaking to someone as well. Your father refuses to go. But I am going. There was something different in her voice. Not performance. Not the strategic tears. Something that sounded like a person looking at an honest reflection for the first time. I want to understand, she said. What it was like for you. What I missed. What I chose not to see. I sat down on the floor of my hallway, back against the wall, the way I used to sit as a child when phone calls felt too large to stand up in. I told her about the restaurant at 11, the empty candle. She already knew that story, but this time I told her what I had felt waiting there. The specific quality of that particular kind of invisible. She did not speak for a long time after. Then she said, I am sorry, Quinn. And I did not say it is okay, the way I would have said before. Because it was not okay. But I said, I hear you, Mom. Which was the truth. I was not ready to offer more than that. But I was willing to remain in the conversation. That felt like progress. When I hung up, I stood, picked up my keys, and drove to Michigan. I sat on my deck until the sun went down and the lake turned silver. Then I went inside and slept better than I had in months. The real surprise came 10 days later, and it came through Miles. He called me on a Saturday morning while I was in the middle of replanting the flower beds at the lake house. Quinn, he said, there is something you need to know. Dad lost his position at the investment firm 3 weeks ago. He had been covering it up, telling Mom it was a temporary restructure. It came out yesterday. I put down the trowel. I am sorry to hear that, I said. And I meant it in the complicated way you mean things about people who have hurt you and are still your family. There is more, Miles said. The Regentech situation got back to his firm. Not through me. Through their internal networks. It damaged his professional reputation in a way he could not recover from this quarter. I did not respond. I had not made a single call to accelerate that outcome. I had only told the truth when asked. Miles, I said eventually. I did not do this to him. No, he agreed. He did this. But he is not taking it well. And Mom is holding everything together alone. I thought about what Dr. Levine, the therapist I had started seeing monthly, had said about the difference between accountability and cruelty. I was not responsible for my father's choices, but I was responsible for who I wanted to be in the aftermath. I finished my planting. I called my therapist. I made no decisions that day beyond deciding to sit quietly with the information and let it settle before I acted on any of it. That itself felt like growth. 6 months after my birthday, my father called me for the first time without my mother on the line. I almost did not answer. Then I did. Quinn. His voice sounded older, smaller than I had ever heard it. I know this is overdue. I wanted to say something. I waited. I told myself you did not need support because you always succeeded without it, he said. But that was not foresight. That was failure dressed up as a compliment. I let the sentence settle. I had never heard my father use the word failure in relation to himself. Not once in 32 years. I understand now, he continued, that your achievements were not proof you did not need us. They were proof of what you were capable of in spite of us. He paused. I am in AA, 30 days sober yesterday. I think the drinking covered up a lot of things I did not want to look at. I did not know what to say. So I said the thing I had always wanted him to say to me, returned now as an offering to him. I hear you, Dad. He exhaled. That was all he needed, I think. Not forgiveness. Not the debt wiped clean. Just to be heard. We talked for 11 minutes. Quiet, careful minutes. When we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time. Then I opened a new document and began writing the details for the Edwards First Generation Scholarship. 20 students without family support. Full tuition. Full mentorship. Named not for inheritance, but for reinvention. Built from the bonus my family said should be given to someone else. That felt like the truest thing I had ever built. Lawrence called me into his office on the morning of my 33rd birthday. I assumed it was a project briefing. I had a campaign due in 2 weeks and the client had been demanding. I sat across from him with my notebook and he said, Quinn, put the notebook down. He slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. Effective today. Senior Director of Client Strategy. I stared at the paper. I had applied 3 months ago and heard nothing. I assumed it had gone to someone with more seniority. Lawrence said, I have been watching you manage this team since the Westfield campaign. You do not just run accounts. You grow people. You solve problems before anyone else sees them. You saved a $3 million relationship while your father was standing in our lobby. This promotion is long overdue. I drove to Michigan that afternoon. My birthday. I sat on the deck in the same chair where I had sat a year ago. A store-bought cake in my apartment, a phone full of silence. Tonight, the lake house was full of people who had driven from Chicago to celebrate. Diane with champagne. Lawrence with his handwritten note. Mrs. Bennett with a new quilt, green and gold this time, the colors of something new. 33 candles. One for luck, Mrs. Bennett insisted. I looked out at the water while everyone laughed around me and felt the specific, earned warmth of a life that actually belonged to me. Then a car came up the drive, slow, uncertain. I recognized it immediately. Miles got out first. He held a wrapped package under his arm and raised his hand when he saw me on the deck. I walked down the steps to meet him. He handed me the gift and said, "Open it later." Mom is in the car. She wants to come in. I did not answer right away. I looked at my brother's face. He looked lighter than he had at the dinner table all those months ago. Therapy does that. Truth does that. I nodded. He went back to the passenger side and opened the door, and my mother stepped out into the Michigan evening, holding a small white bakery box with both hands. She crossed the yard slowly. When she reached me, her eyes were bright and her rehearsed smile had come apart into something unpolished and real. "Happy birthday, Quinn," she said. Her voice broke slightly on my name. She said it correctly. She opened the box. Inside was a single cupcake with a lit candle. "Carrot cake," she said. "You always liked that, didn't you?" I did. She had remembered. I stepped aside and let them in. The party settled around them, a little awkward at first, and then warmer, the way rooms do when someone finally tells the truth. Later, after the cake and the toasts and the quiet conversations on the deck, I opened Miles' gift. Inside the wrapping was a framed photograph I had never seen. Me at 7 years old, sitting on the old tire swing in our backyard, laughing at something beyond the camera. Just me. "Found it in Dad's storage boxes," Miles said. He had it restored. Proof you existed, even when nobody was looking. I held it for a long time. Not a solution. Not the full repair of 32 years. But a beginning. Real, documented, and entirely in my hands. Do you think what this family did can truly be undone, or are some things too deep to come back from? Tell me what you would have done in Quinn's place. Leave a comment below. I read every single one.